Hi everyone, and welcome to Complete and Cast, the official podcast for Complete and Box video games. Today in episode 63, there's obviously some differences. We are using a camera, which is very exciting. We caught up with 2010. It's just wonderful. Now, I put this off for a while because, frankly, it's easier to do it when you're just behind a microphone. But I know certain things in the future would be nice to have the camera for. Such as, when we have podcasts where there's more than two people. We've done that before. I feel like having the camera will everyone's voice is different, but at the very least you can kind of see who's talking. I know that when I listen to podcasts and stuff and there's 4 or 5 people, I'm I don't know who's talking. So we're not going to do this for every single one, but I wanted to give it just kind of a tryout. So we're going to use it for some podcasts in the future, and sometimes for our Let's Play videos, depending on, how big of a run it is. Like if I do a speed run, and I want to update it to, Twitch or something like that, or put it on speedrun.com, I'll probably go ahead and use it. So today we're not bringing you anything that's super, super crazy. I was just kind of going through, El Game Rumo, and I was thinking about how PlayStation 1, we've been doing a lot of Let's Play videos on them recently. We call them, essentially Let's Tries, where we pick these random games, and they end up just usually stinking pretty bad. I mean, the PlayStation 1 has 2,500, if not 3,000 games out for it. I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot, and there's a lot of, trash on it. Obviously, there's the games that everyone remembers, your Final Fantasies, Crash Bandicoots, Spyro the Dragon. And in between, there's games that might be loved by certain specific collectors and PlayStation enthusiasts, but games that, even if they're kind of well known, I find are just generally unappreciated. So that's what we're going to bring you today. We're going to do my top 10 most underappreciated PlayStation 1 games. So I'm going to start with a bonus one because y'all deserve a bonus. So this is technically the honorable mention. We have ourselves the original Clock Tower for PlayStation 1. I know that this game is definitely a cult classic, and people who like horror games generally very much love this game despite its numerous flaws, and I'm one of them as well. I just figured I would mention on the list because it really did pioneer a lot of stuff for the horror genre. You could even include the Super Famicom one that we never got over here in America, but this is the first that we got. This is the first that I played back then, and it really, the point-and-click stylings of it, the almost silly and yet brutal nature of it, it's just a fantastic horror game, despite, like I said, its numerous flaws. I mean, when you start the game off in the prologue, as my phone goes off, as you start the game in the prologue, you have probably a half hour of literally nothing. And every time you play the game, you have to go through that nonsense where you have to, do these very specific things, talk to these very specific people, and that continues the plot. There's only 3 stages, and the first stage you can beat when you know what you're doing in probably 3 minutes if you get lucky. The second one, honestly, maybe even 2 minutes. And then the last one's a pretty long stage. So it's not anything, if you would write down all of its good qualities on paper, that you would be like, wow, that ends up being a good game. And, you could put down a bunch of flaws, like it's slow paced, the graphics are kind of funky, it's point and click. And yet something about it just still resonates to this day with pretty much, any horror fans. So, again, it's not like it's a household name like a Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon kind of thing. It's not something that everyone would come out and be like, oh, do you have Clock Tower? And obviously it's getting harder to find, so there is, suitors out there for it. But I do consider it somewhat underappreciated still because of how important it is. It isn't quite up there with your Resident Evils and Silent Hills. It's still not on that echelon, and it really did a lot for the horror genre. So that is the honorable mention. We're going to head into the list proper. Number 10 is anything in the Point Blank series. I have Point Blank 2 here. Made by Namco, which back then they made, pretty much, I mean, they still make, pretty good stuff, but back then just everything was just awesome. So Point Blank is a arcade-style shooter game. I guess the best way of putting it is it's a bunch of mini games where it's almost like if you ever played WarioWare, where everything you do is a very short mini game. That's kind of what it is for this. It's so cute. It's so funny. Despite like not really having like a story, it's very, just like I said, cute. It has class. Some of the stuff you'll do is like very simple, like shoot all the balloons but not the bombs. But then other times it'll be like save Professor whoever, and he obviously looks like one of the characters from the tribe or whatever. And it's obviously a game that was meant for the arcades. This is one arcade machine. If you ask me, like, what are your top 3 arcade machines that you would like absolutely love to have, and one of the Point Blanks is definitely one of them. Very arcade style. Like I said, it's meant to eat up your quarters. It's hard too. Obviously, you can play it with the controller, but it's best with the GunCon 1 if possible. But like I said, not super well known, more of an arcadey kind of thing, more of like a silly short kind of thing. It's not a 40-hour long RPG or anything like that, but very underappreciated. Anything in the Point Blank series. There are 3 of them for the PlayStation 1, so pick whichever one you want. I got another one that's a little bit out of left field here. You're going to see that some of these are ones you may have never heard of, and some of these are ones that you would think, I've definitely heard of that. Why is it on here? This is the former. This is Dracula The Resurrection. I actually just did a Let's Play on this a couple months ago. It is a Myst-style game, in that I mean it is a point-and-click, where do I go, what do I do kind of thing. It's not perfect by any means, but I very much appreciate how they try to put a game like this on the PlayStation. Of course, it is 2 discs. It's not an exceedingly long game, because on the PlayStation, all that disc space was utilized with FMVs. That's what took up all the disc space. Pretty famously, Final Fantasy VII, they say that the entire game is put on every single disc, disc 1, 2, and 3. The thing that differentiates it is the FMVs, that they couldn't obviously possibly fit all the FMVs on one disc. So yeah, not a super long game. Sometimes it's a little bit silly. The voice acting is definitely, I want to say almost House of the Dead tier, but I really appreciate, especially as a big fan of both the horror and the adventure genre, of when, even nowadays on the PS4, when they take a game that really is meant for PC like this and then port it to the PlayStation. It's definitely appreciated by me. Like I said, it's not going to run you too much. It's a pretty cheap game, and you're probably going to have to look up what to do sometimes, because there's like a lot of intricate stuff going on. Sometimes the items are not the easiest thing to see. But like I said, definitely underappreciated, because I don't think I've ever heard anyone like specifically mention it, and we've only ever had it at the store like once or twice. So that was number 9, Dracula The Resurrection. Now this next one is pretty well known. We have Mega Man Legends, number 8. Obviously, anyone who's big into the retro scene knows about this game. But I was watching Angry Video Game Nerd, the one he did several years ago about the Mega Man series, and he mentions that he doesn't like Mega Man Legends, and it kind of got me to thinking, like, I bet there are people out here that actually don't like this game. I guess because it's a 3D Mega Man one. But pretty much like a lot of the games I like that aren't horror, it's very cute, it's very kitschy, it's very over the top. All the characters, Tron Bon and Mega Man and Grandpa, everyone's super, super memorable. Everyone has silly, fun things that they say. It's a pretty long game, too, for this type of game, and it's just one of those that it could have been. I did a playthrough on this, a Let's Play on the channel, maybe a couple of years ago at this point, and I really didn't play it, I want to say, for like at least 5 years before then, but like every single thing came flooding back to me. Again, there are definitely people who love it, and it's definitely one of those games that people will mention, but it's nowhere near on the level of a lot of the RPGs like the Final Fantasies or, again, Crash Bandicoot. People ask for it at the store, but it's not like an everyday kind of occurrence. It's not one of those it's not Mega Man 2 level where someone's like, oh, you got Mega Man 2 or Mega Man X. I consider Mega Man Legends to be on a different styling, of course, to be just as good as 2, Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3, Mega Man X. Obviously, all amazing games. But again, this one isn't quite on that pedestal. So if you haven't picked it up, it's usually around $30-$40, something like that, and it's definitely worth it. I haven't played the port Mega Man 64 before, so I can't comment on that, but I can't imagine playing a game like that on the N64 controller, so I'd probably go with this one, despite the fact that this probably has longer loads. So, number 8, Mega Man Legends. Coming up to number 7, this is a game that's actually pretty universally hated, Resident Evil Survivor. I have this on the underappreciated list because it is not as bad as people make it out to be. I find myself not to be an apologist of a lot of games. Like I just mentioned earlier, Clock Tower has a lot of flaws. But it's still enjoyable. Whereas this, people act like this game is like completely unplayable, that it's just trash garbage. I don't really see that. Now, is it as good as 1, 2, 3, Code Veronica 4, any of those? Even 5. Is it as good as 5? No, not really. But it's a very unique game. It's cool to play a Resident Evil game in first person. It's cool to have a handgun that doesn't run out of bullets. So that's kind of one of the things that you can play it as a different thing. Play it as a more arcadey kind of thing. Is it obviously perfect by any means? No. The story is silly and over the top. I still remember the main spoilers. No, you know what? I won't. Yeah, whatever. Spoilers. This game's 20 years old. Deal with it, or skip ahead 20 seconds. Ark Thompson ends up being the name of your character, and his voice is just amazing. Huh? I'm Ark. It's one of those things where it's so bad, it's good kind of thing. Although, like I said, the gameplay really isn't that bad. The fact that you can play almost House of the Dead style first-person shooter where you can walk around on your own, pretty long game for a game like this. And again, this isn't a top 10 best games on the PS1 list. This is a top 10 underappreciated, and people generally really hate on this game, and it does not deserve that amount of hate. Should it be, again, up with Resident Evil 3? No, but it definitely deserves the number 7 spot on the underappreciated list. Now, next up, another very well-known game. We have Brave Fencer Musashi. I find that for your average, hardcore PlayStation 1 person or even hardcore retro game collector, of course they're going to know Brave Fencer Musashi, but again, it never got to that level of, I would say, definitely nothing's up to the Final Fantasy level, but I would go as far to say that it never got to Legend of Dragoon level in terms of popularity, Xenogears, even some of the other stuff like maybe Legend of Legaia, maybe they're on the same level, but this game deserves to be, it really deserves to be played by everyone who likes any sort of action RPGs or just games. It's funny, it's over the top, again, it's cute. I love games that are just silly and don't take themselves seriously. The voice acting is incredible. It's wonderful. The story is amazing. My only complaint, because I've played this game probably 4 times now, I did it for a Let's Play several years ago, and I literally have a hankering to do it again, and I'm like, why? There's so many games to, go out there and experience, but it's just one of those I just always want to go through. It's, like I said, my only complaint about it is that I wish it was a little longer. If you do everything, maybe 20 hours, maybe standard gameplay, 10, 12, something like that, maybe 15. I just wish there was more to explore and all that, and I understand Square back then was pretty infamous with deadlines on their games, as we'll see with another game coming up, which if you know me personally, you know that it's going to be on this list. But it's pretty obvious that a lot of the Square games at the time, they were excellent, they were amazing, but it was one of those things where if they allowed for 6 more months, a year, 3 months, whatever, that they would have been able to add more. So it's perfect the way it is, but if it would have been 20% longer or another side quest of collecting stuff, I would have loved it even more. So again, decently well-known game, never got on the level of some of those RPGs, really deserves your time. The only negative is it's going to run you maybe $40-$50. But I absolutely guarantee, and if you're not a collector, just buy I think it's actually a 1-disc game. Yeah, because the second disc is some sort of interactive demo thing. Just buy the CD then, maybe $20-$30 hopefully. It's definitely worth your time. It's cute, it's funny, it's just great. And it's number, I believe that's 6, 7, 10, 9, 8, 7, yeah, number 6 on my list of underappreciated games. We have another one coming up, number 5. I consider it kind of mid-tier in terms of popularity. Fear Effect. I don't know what to classify this game as. 3D, not platformer because you don't jump. Horror game, action game. It's a little bit of everything. It's so over the top in a different way than most of the games we've been talking. This one's over the top in terms of like the gore and the ridiculous story and everyone turning into zombies and everyone dying and main characters dying and coming back and all this stuff. For this game, very, very heavy on the cutscenes, very difficult. You don't really have a life bar. You have more of like a fear meter, which is almost like the heartbeat monitor kind of thing. I could definitely see someone picking this up and dying in the first 2 minutes and being like, wow, I hate this. The most important thing to know about this game is all of the backgrounds are FMVs, like the whole way through. So you're walking and you're able to, do your stuff on the main board, so to say. But everything in the background is going to be FMVs, and they actually play into that super well. There's many times in the game where like you'll see some sort of like death trap. Early on, there's a helicopter that like comes up to the top of a building and it'll shoot for a while and then go down, and it's all about timing at that point, So yeah, you go to it, you wait for it to go, the helicopter go down, then you climb up and you go through. It's a very usually specific timing on that. That's the way it is for a lot of stuff. There's some like puzzles where they'll show you like there's this one where you're on a rooftop where a helicopter will go by or some sort of light, and it'll show you which of the glass tiles are cracked, and those are the ones you don't step on. You step on all the other ones. Very puzzle heavy for a game like this, but the puzzles aren't like so silly that they're like duh kind of thing. Like even like I love Resident Evil 4, but a lot of the puzzles in Resident Evil 4 are like, okay, just do it, just continue on with the action. This one's more of like you will be stumped at some of these puzzles. Fantastic game. I don't consider this one to be that well known. Probably one of the, not quite Dracula the Resurrection levels down here, but definitely not where someone like will ask for it daily. Runs you about $20, $25. The only negative here is it's 4 discs, so buying it just disc only to play, it's probably going to cost you about the same thing anyway, because, lovely 4 disc games. And there is a sequel on the PS1 as well, Fear Effect 2 Retro Helix, which is more of the same, but like even more ridiculous. Fear Effect Inferno for the PS2 was canceled, and I will like always be sad about that. I just feel like that was one that was destined for greatness. And then they came out with a Fear Effect game on PSN maybe like last year, and it's like a Shadowrun type of game where they have that specific angle looking down, and it just didn't look like the kind of game that I enjoy. So is what it is on there. But anyway, in the meantime, this is number 5 on the list. I should have written this down, but I didn't. So number 5 on the list. Fantastic, underappreciated game. Number 4, we have No Cutting Corners. She's on the border now. Jammer Lammy. This is the sequel to Parappa the Rapper. Now, I'm a big fan of the whole series. Parappa, Jammer, Parappa 2, that's it. I mean, when I say whole series, I make it seem like it's a super long thing. People generally remember Parappa the Rapper because it was a very early PlayStation 1 game, and it was really not like anything else. It really changed the genre. It was before, I believe, don't quote me on this, but it was either before or right around the same time as like a Dance Dance Revolution started. I want to say it was probably before. And it was definitely before stuff like Guitar Hero, DJ Hero, stuff like that, where it's like rhythm-based music games. So a lot of times people remember Parappa as a game to, really, love years later. But when you go back and play Parappa nowadays, the first Parappa, it's only 6 stages long. The songs are maybe, 3 minutes long, max sometimes. And it doesn't have a lot of volume to it. Like the songs when you look at it today, the songs are like, oh, okay, this is it. The songs, don't get me wrong, are great, but like the way you play them and how simple the button presses are and stuff, it's like really not anything crazy. The difficulty from Parappa 1 comes from the fact that I cannot figure out what the timing is on that game. I don't know why sometimes I do well and why sometimes I do bad. I've played it probably 20 times on tube TVs, the way it was meant to be played, and it's still difficult. Jammer Lammy came out and did everything Parappa the Rapper did, but much better. There is 7 stages this time, but the stages are much more involved. Generally, the songs are either a little bit longer or a little bit tougher. It has a co-op mode where you can kind of play the songs all differently. It has a 2-player mode with Parappa and Jammer, so like sometimes Parappa's rapping and she's playing guitar. The other part that makes this game so much better, besides just the coolness and cute factor, is when you do a game like Parappa the Rapper, when he, kick, punch, it's all in the mind. If you're off by like a millisecond, it sounds weird. Like, kick, punch, all mine. It sounds weird. But with this, where you're playing just guitar, no matter what you do, it sounds awesome. So you're like, da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. And even if that's not right, it sounds awesome. You can also kind of like pitch up and stuff with like R1 and L1 and just kind of mess around with it. Really super cute game by Sony. Parappa the Rapper is brought up all the time, was put into PlayStation All-Stars. Remember that game? And generally that game's like $40-$50, whereas Jammer Lammy is going to cost you like $15, maybe $20. I haven't checked this one recently, but that's what it was for a long time. Not nearly as well known, but so much better. So definitely deserving of my 4th spot on the underappreciated list today. We're getting to the big 3 here. 2 will not surprise you, and 1 will surprise you. So number 3, we have another Squaresoft game, Threads of Fate. I consider this to be... I don't know if this came out after or before Brave Fencer. Looking on this, probably after. I consider this to be, then I guess I would say, a spiritual successor to Brave Fencer Musashi. Similar in the way that it's a really tight, well-built action RPG. Definitely a lot based off the humor. All the characters are very well rounded. The main character you play, I forget her name, the girl with the 2 rings she holds, is like such a brat, just like Musashi was such a brat. Has really cool, I guess it's Klonoa, did that kind of 2.5D where sometimes you walk right. It's on a 2-dimensional plane, but sometimes you end up going this way. Really cool, really underappreciated. Unfortunately, it will run you like $40, $50, $60, something around there. But definitely a game from the second... I actually never heard of this one before, maybe 5 years ago, when I happened upon it. And if you think Brave Fencer Musashi kind of was like underappreciated overall, this Threads of Fate, people do not mention it. It is a rather late release PlayStation 1 game, so that makes a lot of sense there. PlayStation 2 was coming out in 2000 and all that. But really just excellent. Brave Fencer Musashi does the whole, I guess you would call it, exploration and world building a little bit better, but this does the action of it just amazing. Because sometimes the Brave Fencer Musashi will be a little bit funky on the action, but this is just an incredible action RPG full way through. Number 3, underappreciated list. Now, number 2, this one will surprise literally everyone, which, by the way, I normally take the stickers off my games, but I left this one on specifically because I bought this from a place called Arboria in State College, and whenever we went up to State College maybe once a year, and it was a great memory as a kid and a teenager and all that, and they closed down, I don't know, 10 years ago, before Complete in Box opened. And it was one of those things that I always like miss. If I remember in that area, I'm like, oh, I wish I could go to Arboria, because it was which, by the way, I don't even know if you can look it up, but it's Arboria, Arboria. It was mostly a music store, so my dad obviously loved that. He loves everything to do with music, and obviously I'm more of a video games thing. But they had a video game section where like literally every time we went in, there was like a game to pick up. I picked up Metal Gear Solid VR Missions, I know because I left the sticker on that one. Anyway, so we have Bowling. I know, it's just called Bowling for the PlayStation 1, and it looks, everything about it, like, there's a lot of games that have this. I don't know how well you can see it. I guess I don't know if it's all made by AI Games, but when you look on the back, they'll show you like the type of game it is, like Brain Teaser or Key or Sports or whatever. Yeah, I guess Age Tech and AI Games, or A1 Games, excuse me, put out a lot of these. But you'll notice there's a lot of other games that'll have this this exact same like background on it. Clearly, it's a budget title. I mean, Age Tech, by the way, ended up making Kuon for the PS2. Right? Like one of like the most like rare games on the PS2. Not necessarily a good game, but rare game. And this is one that you would think would just be like a quick cash grab, and it is bare bones as heck. There is no, how a lot of games will have like, fancy characters you can pick from, and it'll show them like doing the wind up, and like they'll have this like whole cinematic. There's none of that. This game is as simple as humanly possible. It is bowling. It's called bowling, and it's just bowling. There's a couple variants. Once you get certain levels, like I think if you roll a 200 game, you get and I might have the order of this wrong, the big ball. So it's like this really big ball that you can use, much easier to hit pins, obviously. Then once you get a 300 game, you get the psychic ball, which is one where like normally you could curve it like this. This is one you can like just go all over the place. They have some specific setups where they'll give you like, oh, hit this 7-10 split, that's challenge 1. And then they have what is either 50 or 100 pin bowling, which is pretty cool. They obviously much wider lane, and you try to get more pins down. It's bare bones as heck. It's bowling. It's called bowling, and it's bowling. But there's something about it that's so simple that it's so gosh darn funny. Believe it or not, bowling, we did a Let's Play on this, I want to say 2013 or so, and it's one of our top 3, if not top 5 most viewed videos on this channel, with like several thousand views. I'm sure it's a YouTube algorithm thing just because it was like PlayStation bowling, very simple words, but this game is incredible. It's going to cost you $5. It's so simple and so just wonderful. It's just, and thank you Arboria for selling this to me for $10 because I literally got 20 times the amount of enjoyment out of this. I've played this game so much. It sounds so silly, but bowling for the PlayStation, number 2 most underappreciated game. And if you know me personally at all, and you know my game taste, having Saga Frontier as number 1 would not be a surprise here. I really tried to put bowling as number 1 because like no one thinks about bowling. As my dog's going nuts, I apologize about that. But Saga Frontier, Squaresoft again. I think this is the 3rd or 4th game that they had on here. At the very least, the 3rd. Very underappreciated, not nearly on the level of a Final Fantasy or Legend of Dragoon. I understand why it's that way. This is the game that's infamous for having the 7 side quests, or the 7 main quests, where you have 7 different characters to go through it. Oh, she stopped. Okay, I was going to pause there for a second. Anyway, so this is the game that is famous for having the 7 different main characters. It's infamous for me for what could have been. It's still easily one of my top 5. I'm going to say top 5 games of all time. It's always been near the top ever since I played it. It's infamous for me because this game was under strict deadlines by Square, and there's a lot of stuff that was left out of the game. They meant to have an 8th character fuse. There's many parts in the game. This is almost like a clock tower where you appreciate the game you almost appreciate it more for its flaws. I know that sounds weird, but the fact that it's like an imperfect game and you see exactly what they were going for with a lot of this stuff makes me like love it even more. I don't know if it's the mystery of it, the mystery of what would the 8th quest be, why is this item like supposed to be here but it's not game-breaking stuff, just like minor weird stuff. Like a lot of stuff isn't like super well explained in the game, and you know that with more time they would go into it. This is definitely a strategy guide game. If you're going to get it, it costs you maybe $30-40 for the game. Pick up the strategy guide. It's going to be super helpful. Speaking of the strategy guide, you can tell also how rushed this game was because in the place where it tells you where all the monsters, what their stats are. I always pronounce the name of that wrong, so I'm not even going to try. the HP values for most of the monsters, not only are they wrong, but they're like way wrong. One of the ultimate bosses, the Earth Dragon, they say it has like, I don't have it in front of me, but something like 20,000, 30,000 HP, and it definitely has like 10 times that much, if not 20 times that much. It's one of those games that you look at it and you imagine what could be, but you still appreciate all the stuff that it has going on with it. Really is just fantastic, underappreciated game. I can't suggest it enough. Definitely, please, by all means, have a strategy guide with you, because otherwise it's going to be ridiculously hard to figure out what's going on. I forgot to mention, the game is beautiful. It uses like sprites, but the backgrounds are like hand drawn. It's gorgeous. It's one of those things that like, even nowadays with a lot of the games that like look beautiful, like Shovel Knight and Bloodstained, there's something about how the PlayStation went about its sprites and its graphics that the newer technology, like, it flows so well, 60 frames per second, all that, but it can't quite get what this is. The soundtrack is so good that I listen to it all the time as a thing. Not while I'm playing the game, just while I'm just, like, at the store. Like, if you've been at the store, more than, say, 6, maybe 7, 8, 10 times over the course of, however long we've been, the 9 years we've been around, you might have heard this soundtrack before. I play it probably once a month, once every couple of months, and sometimes I get in a mood where I play it, like, a couple times a day for a couple weeks kind of thing. Soundtrack's amazing. The story is some of the 7 characters are very bare bones on the story. Some of them are much more in depth, so you can obviously tell where some of the cuts were. I don't know what it is. I've tried to think, over the years what it is. I think now that I'm saying it, it's really the mystery of this to me. Like, this game already is fantastic. Unbelievable, but what if they had that extra 6 months to put it in? Would it literally be unquestionably, at least for me, the greatest game of all time? If they had that extra 6 months, would I always start, 10 years ago I might have said, oh, this is my favorite game of all time, and then I might have been like, oh, Castlevania 4, oh, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario RPG. It's changed over the course of the years, but if they had that extra 6 months to put on this, would it literally be just the best game? Okay, well, Saga Frontier is always number 1, but what's number 2? That's always changing. That's the kind of stuff that I think about this. So like I said, 100% definitely suggest it. It feels so good playing. There's so much to go on in this game. The battle style is very unique. That's one more thing I want to go over real quick, just because I love this game so much. When you go into a battle, and they're the style like where it's not random encounters, you have to walk into the enemies to fight them, which I love in RPGs. When you use certain attacks, you have a chance of learning a certain new ability. I guess is the easiest way of putting it. Say you start out with just a normal sword, and then you'll learn double slash. And using double slash gives you a higher chance of using a stronger attack like thrust. And using thrust will give you a higher chance of learning something like triple thrust. The amazing thing about this game, and again, going into the mystery of it, is no one knows exactly how the ability learning system works. No one. If anyone ever tells you that they know exactly, it's not the case. All the FAQs out there will say, okay, well, to learn Life Sprinkler, which is the best sword technique, there's a pretty good chance if you use, Dead End or Still Scream, but we don't really know. It seems like when I learned Life Sprinkler, I was using Life Stream, but and then there's sometimes where you'll get a character super, super strong and they'll never learn Life Stream. Or they'll never learn one thing, and then you'll have another run through where they're going to learn everything. I guess that's another thing. It makes it very unique because no playthrough is the same because of how these abilities work. Can be frustrating at times, I understand that, but it also is like, sometimes with certain characters, first move I've done in the entire game, I'm like, whoa, that's a pretty good move. And you just find out that this iteration of this character is just kicking butt all over the place. And other playthroughs I've done of it, I'm like, why is this character not learning anything? It's it's, again, I can understand why someone would be like kind of frustrated with it, but at the same time, it's RNG, it's the random number generation, so you just gotta deal with it. So, like I said, cannot suggest this enough. I can talk about this game for an hour. I won't. So that was my list of top 10 plus one bonus. Underappreciated PlayStation 1 games. Let me know yours below. If you disagree with any of mine, I completely understand, or if you have something to add. I will add that I only used ones out of my personal collection because I don't do any editing or anything. I didn't want to have to edit in a file or edit in gameplay of it. So I just looked through and I was like, hey, this is underappreciated. I'm sure there's some I missed, and obviously it's underappreciated is definitely a something that everyone would disagree on. So thank you much. Let me know if you like doing it with the with the webcam. We're gonna try to do that sometimes in the future, and that's about it. This was Completing Cast. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it.